The ambush at outer reach. The bridge of the Terran survey ship Horizon hummed with the steady rhythm of deep space operations. Commander Elena Vasquez stood near the central display, her dark eyes scanning the star charts that painted the holographic screen before her. The Horizon was a modest vessel by fleet standards, a Sentinel-class frigate designed for exploration and patrol duties along the outer territories of human space. She carried a crew of only 83 souls, but each one was trained to handle whatever the galaxy might throw at them. Elena had been in command of the Horizon for 3 years now, and in that time they had mapped 7 new systems, established first contact with 2 minor species, and resolved countless disputes between frontier colonies. It was honest work, the kind that built bridges instead of burning them. She preferred it that way. The wars of humanity's past had taught bitter lessons, and Elena had no desire to repeat those mistakes among the stars. Lieutenant Marcus Chen looked up from his station, his young face creased with concern. He was the communications officer, barely 25 years old, but he had proven himself reliable in the months since joining the crew. "Commander, we're receiving a distress signal from the Outer Reach mining colony. They report hostile vessels in their space and request immediate assistance." Elena felt her stomach tighten. Outer Reach was a small operation, home to perhaps 200 miners and their families, extracting rare minerals from the asteroid belt that circled a dying star. They were good people, hardworking and far from any real protection. The nearest fleet patrol was weeks away at conventional drive speeds. "Distance to Outer Reach?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the concern building in her chest. 4 hours at maximum burn, responded Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo from the navigation console. She was a veteran of the outer colonies, her skills honed by years of threading through dangerous space. "We can make it, Commander, but we'll be running our reactors hot." Elena nodded. There was no real choice to be made here. Set course for Outer Reach. Maximum speed. Battle stations. The klaxons began their urgent wail throughout the ship, and the crew moved with practiced precision to their combat positions. Elena felt the deck vibrate beneath her boots as the Horizon's powerful engines engaged, pushing the frigate toward the distant colony at speeds that made the stars blur into streams of light. Chief Engineer David Park's voice crackled over the intercom from deep within the ship's engine room. "Commander, I'm giving you everything she's got. The old girl's singing, but she'll hold together. Just try not to ask for miracles when we get there." "No promises, David," Elena replied with a thin smile. She had served with Park for 8 years, and she trusted him more than almost anyone else aboard. If he said the engines would hold, they would hold. The hours passed with agonizing slowness. Elena used the time to review everything they knew about threats in this sector. Pirates were common enough, ragtag groups of desperate individuals preying on isolated outposts. But something about this felt different. The distress call had mentioned multiple vessels, and pirates rarely operated in organized groups. They were opportunists, not tacticians. As the Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Outer Reach system, the truth revealed itself in terrible clarity. Lieutenant Chen's face went pale as his sensors lit up with contact markers. "Commander, I'm reading 15 vessels in orbit around the colony. Configuration matches Zarkothian war fleet patterns." The bridge fell silent. Every member of the crew knew what that meant. The Zarkothians were not pirates. They were an empire, vast and ancient, with technology that rivaled humanity's and ambitions that knew no limits. They had been pushing into this sector for months, testing human resolve, probing for weaknesses. But this was different. This was an invasion force. Elena's mind raced through the possibilities. 15 warships against 1 frigate. The odds were impossible. The smart play would be to retreat, to call for reinforcements, to let the colony fall and save her crew. But she looked at the display showing Outer Reach, imagining the families huddled in shelters, the children crying as alien soldiers prepared to storm their homes. She thought of humanity's long history, of all the times when people had stood against impossible odds because it was the right thing to do. "Tactical assessment," Elena said quietly. Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez, the weapons officer, worked his console with grim efficiency. He was a stocky man with graying hair and the scars of old battles on his weathered face. "Commander, we're looking at 5 heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers and 2 carrier vessels. They've already deployed fighter craft around the colony. Our shields won't last more than a few minutes under concentrated fire, and our weapons are designed for patrol duty, not fleet engagement." "So you're saying we can't win," Elena said. Rodriguez met her eyes. "I'm saying the math doesn't favor us. But I've learned not to bet against human stubbornness." "What are your orders, Commander?" Elena turned to face her crew. She saw fear in their eyes but also determination. They were volunteers, every one of them, people who had chosen to venture into the darkness between stars knowing that danger waited there. They deserved honesty. We can run. No one would blame us. The fleet will avenge the colony, and we'll live to fight another day. Or we can buy these people time to evacuate, to hide, to survive. We can show the Zarkothians that humanity doesn't abandon its own. Sarah Okonkwo spoke first, her voice clear and strong. I didn't join the Survey Corps to run from fights, Commander. Let's show these bastards what one human ship can do. The sentiment spread across the bridge like wildfire. Nods, determined expressions, hands moving to weapons controls. Elena felt a surge of pride that threatened to overwhelm her. These were her people, her crew, and they were magnificent. All hands, this is the commander, Elena announced over the ship-wide intercom. We're going into battle against superior forces to protect Outer Reach Colony. I won't lie to you. The odds are bad. But we're human and we've never let bad odds stop us before. Every second we keep their attention is another second for those colonists to find safety. Engineering, I need every trick you've got. Weapons, make every shot count. Medical, prepare for casualties. And everyone, remember your training. We're the horizon and we don't back down. The affirmations came back from every section of the ship, voices united in purpose. Elena took her seat in the commander's chair and gripped the armrests. Sarah, take us in. Combat approach, maximum evasion protocols. James, I want firing solutions on their carrier vessels. If we can ground their fighters, we improve our odds. The horizon surged forward, a single small ship diving into a fleet of alien warships. The Zarkothian vessels were beautiful in their way, elegant curves of dark metal that reflected the light of distant stars. But beauty meant nothing in war. What mattered was will, skill, and the desperate courage of people fighting for something greater than themselves. The first Zarkothian energy lance reached out across the void, a brilliant beam of coherent light that struck the horizon's forward shields. The ship shuddered, alarms blaring as the defensive systems absorbed the impact. Then another beam and another as the alien fleet recognized the threat and began to concentrate fire. Elena watched the shield indicators drop with horrifying speed. 30%. 20%. They wouldn't last long. James, return fire. All weapons free. The horizon's railgun spoke with thunder, magnetically accelerated projectiles screaming across space at relativistic speeds. Human weapons were crude compared to energy lances, but they hit like hammers. The first salvo struck a Zarkothian destroyer, punching through its shields and tearing into the hull beneath. Atmosphere vented into space as the alien ship listed to one side. Target damaged but still operational, Rodriguez reported. Adjusting fire. The battle had begun and there was no turning back now. The horizon danced through space, Sarah's piloting skills keeping them just ahead of the deadly beams that sought to end them. They were one ship against 15, one crew against an empire. The math said they should already be dead. But humans had never been very good at math when survival was on the line. The final stand. The horizon twisted through space like a wounded bird, her shields flickering with each impact from the Zarkothian energy weapons. Commander Elena Vasquez gripped her chair as another blast rocked the ship, sending sparks cascading from an overhead panel. The acrid smell of burning circuits filled the bridge, but her crew remained focused, their hands steady on their controls despite the chaos erupting around them. Shield integrity at 8%, Lieutenant Chin called out, his voice strained but controlled. Commander, we can't take much more of this. Elena knew he was right. They had managed to damage 3 Zarkothian vessels in the opening exchange, but the cost had been severe. The horizon's shields were nearly gone, and damage reports flooded in from every section of the ship. Yet somehow, impossibly, they were still fighting. The colonists on Outer Reach had gained precious minutes to evacuate, to flee into the deep caverns of the asteroid bases where the Zarkothians would have difficulty finding them. But minutes would not be enough. They needed hours. David, what's our reactor status? Elena asked, her mind racing through possibilities that seemed to grow more desperate by the second. Chief Engineer Park's voice came through heavy with static. We're redlining across the board, Commander. But I've got an idea. It's completely insane and it violates about 40 safety protocols, but these aren't exactly normal circumstances. I'm listening, Elena said. I can reroute power from life support and artificial gravity to the shields and weapons. We'd have maybe 20 minutes of air and everyone not strapped down is going to be floating, but we'd hit 3 times as hard and take twice the punishment. It might give us the edge we need. Elena looked around the bridge at her crew. They were already pulling on emergency oxygen masks, securing themselves to their stations. Sarah gave her a thumbs up. Rodriguez was grinning like a madman. These people were ready to bet everything on one final throw of the dice. "Do it," Elena commanded. "All hands secure for zero gravity and switch to emergency oxygen. We're about to show the Zarkothians what human desperation looks like." The change was immediate. Elena felt her body lift from the chair, held down only by her restraints. The lights dimmed as power flowed away from comfort systems and into the tools of war. On her display she watched the shield strength climb back to 30%, then 40%. The railgun's charging indicators accelerated, their capacitors filling faster than should have been possible. "Sarah, new flight pattern," Elena said, her words slightly muffled by the oxygen mask. "I want you to use the Zarkothian ships themselves as cover. Put their own vessels between us and their guns. Make them choose between shooting us and hitting their own people." "Aye, Commander," Sarah replied, and Elena felt the horizon bank hard to port. The veteran pilot sent them diving beneath a Zarkothian heavy cruiser, using its massive bulk as a shield against the weapons fire from the other vessels. The aliens hesitated, their discipline preventing them from risking friendly fire. That hesitation was all Elena needed. "James, full spread on the cruiser above us. Target their engine section. I want them crippled and drifting." The horizon's weapons blazed with renewed fury. Railgun rounds hammered into the cruiser's underbelly, punching through armor that had been designed to withstand frontal assaults, not close-range bombardment from below. The Zarkothian ship's engines exploded in a cascade of blue-white energy, and suddenly the massive cruiser was spinning out of control, its trajectory taking it directly into the path of two destroyers. The aliens tried to adjust, but the laws of physics are the same for every species. The crippled cruiser collided with one destroyer, the impact crumpling both vessels. The second destroyer managed to veer away but exposed its flank to the Horizon's guns in the process. Rodriguez took full advantage, his targeting systems painting the enemy ship with a dozen lock indicators before unleashing another devastating salvo. The Zarkothian fleet commander must have realized at that moment that standard tactics would not work against this single human ship. Elena watched on her sensors as the enemy formation began to change, spreading out, trying to surround the horizon from all angles simultaneously. It was the right move, the tactical solution to dealing with a smaller, more maneuverable opponent. But Elena had been expecting it. "Sarah, execute pattern Delta 7. Take us straight toward their carriers." It was the last thing the Zarkothians expected. The damaged human frigate, shields barely holding, suddenly accelerated directly into the heart of their formation. The carrier vessels were hanging back from the main battle, their fighter craft providing support while staying out of direct combat. They were vulnerable, and Elena intended to exploit that vulnerability. The Zarkothian fighters swarmed like angry insects, their energy weapons stitching lines of fire across the horizon's hull. The frigate's point defense systems engaged automatically, small-caliber railguns spitting out thousands of rounds per second. Human tracking systems, designed by a species that had learned warfare in atmosphere before reaching for the stars, were exceptionally good at hitting small, fast-moving targets. Zarkothian fighters began exploding like fireworks, their formations breaking apart in confusion. Lieutenant Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "Commander, I'm picking up communications between the Zarkothian vessels. Our translation algorithm is processing it now." A pause, then his voice rose with excitement. "They're calling for reinforcements. They think we're the advance element of a larger human fleet." Elena felt something close to hope bloom in her chest. The Zarkothians were afraid. One damaged frigate had hurt them badly enough that they believed an entire fleet must be coming. It was absurd, but fear makes people see patterns that aren't there, threats that don't exist. "Broadcast on all Zarkothian frequencies," Elena ordered. "Tell them that this is just the beginning. Tell them that humanity protects its own, and that every ship they send into our space will be met with the same resistance. Make them believe." Chen worked his console frantically, and moments later Elena's words went out across space in the clicking, whistling language of the Zarkothian Empire. She watched the enemy fleet's reaction on her sensors. Ships that had been moving to engage suddenly hesitated. The tactical advantage of doubt, the ancient human weapon of psychological warfare, was taking effect. The horizon reached the first carrier, and Rodriguez unleashed everything they had left. Missiles streaked across the void, railguns fired until their barrels glowed red-hot, and even the small-point defense systems added their fury to the assault. The carrier's shields collapsed under the onslaught, and then its hull was breached in a dozen places. Secondary explosions rippled across its length as ammunition stores and fuel reserves ignited. but the effort had cost them dearly. Elena's board lit up with critical damage warnings. David, status report. Port reactor is offline, Commander. We've got fires on 3 decks and the starboard weapon battery is gone. We're running on fumes and prayer at this point. The second carrier was turning to flee, its commander clearly deciding that discretion was the better part of valor. The remaining Zarkothian warships were pulling back, forming a defensive perimeter rather than pressing the attack. They had lost 4 ships completely destroyed, 3 more crippled and one of their 2 carriers. Against a single human frigate. Elena made a decision that went against every tactical instinct she possessed. Chin, open a channel to the Zarkothian fleet commander. Channel open, Commander. Elena spoke clearly, her voice carrying across the void to ears that had never expected to hear a human voice in surrender negotiations. Zarkothian Commander, this is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Terran survey ship Horizon. You have attacked a human colony without provocation. You have shed innocent blood. We have demonstrated the cost of that decision. I am offering you one chance to withdraw from this system peacefully. Take your damaged vessels and leave. If you refuse, we will continue this fight until either you are destroyed or we are. Choose wisely. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Elena could see her crew watching her, wondering if she had finally lost her mind. They were dying slowly, their ship held together by determination and the skill of their engineer. They could not survive another sustained engagement. But the Zarkothians didn't know that. Finally a response came. The voice was synthesized, translated by computer systems into something approaching human speech. You are either the bravest commander we have encountered or the most foolish. We acknowledge your strength. We will withdraw. But know this, human. The Empire will remember this day. We will remember the name Horizon. See that you do, Elena replied. And tell your leaders that every human ship fights like this. Every single one. Remember that before you test our borders again. The Zarkothian fleet began to move, their formation breaking as they prepared for faster-than-light jumps. Within minutes, the last of them had vanished, leaving behind only debris and the fading energy signatures of their departure. The bridge erupted in cheers that quickly turned to laughter, the hysterical release of tension that comes with surviving the impossible. Elena unstrapped herself and floated in the zero gravity, looking at each member of her crew in turn. They had done it. Against all odds, against every tactical analysis, they had won. David, restore life support and gravity when you can, Elena said, suddenly feeling the weight of exhaustion settling over her. Chin, send a message to Outer Reach. Tell them they're safe. And someone get me a status report on casualties and damage. The reports came in slowly. 17 crew members injured, 3 seriously. The ship would need months of repairs in a proper shipyard. But they were alive and the colony was safe. Over the following hours, as emergency repairs were made and the colonists emerged from their hiding places, the story of what had happened began to spread. One human ship against a Zarkothian fleet. One crew that refused to back down. One commander who had bluffed an empire. The legend of the Horizon would grow in the telling, spreading across human space and beyond. Other species would hear of it, would marvel at it, would add it to their understanding of what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. The Zarkothians would indeed remember, and their future incursions into human territory would be far more cautious. But for Elena Vasquez and her crew, floating in the damaged bridge of their battered ship, watching the sunrise over Outer Reach colony through the viewports, the lesson was simpler and more profound. Humanity had spread across the stars carrying with them an ancient truth, one proven again and again throughout their history. It doesn't matter how bad the odds are. It doesn't matter how powerful the enemy. When humans choose to stand and fight for something that matters, when they decide that retreat is not an option, they become something more than the sum of their technology or their numbers. They become a force that can move the universe itself. The Horizon had won not because of superior weapons or tactics, but because 83 human beings had decided that some things were worth dying for. And in that decision they had found something worth living for as well. As the medical teams arrived from the colony to help with the wounded, as the engineers began the long process of cataloging damage and planning repairs, Elena allowed herself a small smile. They had bought time for innocence to survive. They had shown an empire that humanity could not be easily intimidated. And somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, other humans serving on other ships would hear this story and know that when their time came to stand against impossible odds, they would not stand alone. They would stand in the company of the Horizon and every other human who had ever refused to yield. That legacy, Elena thought, was worth any price.